When I was born, I had an older sister and a mom and a dad. Soon after that, I turned about 4 years old, and then my dad passed away. There's not too much else that I really remember about that time, but I do remember there was always kind of like a discord, and our house was always loud just because there was a lot of fighting, there was always a lot of yelling. But one day it ended up worse than it ever had. My mom started throwing things at my sister and I, and things really just started to get out of control. I ended up having to call the cops that day, and they came to pick us up. They started us in the foster care system, and my sister and I were in foster care for about 5 years. During the time of being in foster care, there was a lot of moving, a lot of school changes, leaving in the middle of the year. I don't really know many people from when I was younger. I don't have that, oh, we've been friends since kindergarten, elementary school, whatever. And it made things really difficult because everyone would always talk about how they had these great memories with their childhood friends, and they would just talk about the memories they had with their parents, and it was an unknown territory to me because it wasn't something that I ever really got. During the time that we were in foster care, we went from one of our foster homes, and then we would go back to live with our mom, and then we went back to another foster home, and then we went back with our mom. But that second time we went back, it was only me because my sister didn't want to go back to live with her anymore. Things went really well for a while, and kind of out of nowhere one day, the cops showed up at our door, and I was really confused as to why. And they just told me, you know what, can you just pack some stuff up? We're gonna take you. My mom was just sitting on the couch, and she wouldn't tell me what was going on. So we just got a bag, like a trash bag. I filled it with some of my stuff. I grabbed my green bear that I took with me everywhere. And then we went back to the foster home. When I got back to that home, it was the one that my sister and I had both previously stayed at. And when I got there, she wasn't there anymore. So I was super confused because I thought that we were going to be together again. Like, I had already been separated from my sister for 6 months. It was really lonely. I was always used to people kind of coming in and out of the house just because with the foster care, there are kids that come from everywhere really. But not having my sister there was really difficult. And one day my social worker told me, or she asked me, hey, do you want to go live with your sister? I was like, yeah, obviously. Like, she's my sister. I don't have my dad, and I don't really have my mom. I want what I can get. And I remember that day was a Wednesday. And by the time that Friday rolled around, I had all my stuff in bags again, and I went to the next foster home, which was where my sister was. They ended up adopting both my sister and I, and then we also had 2 other adopted sisters as well. But soon after that, my sister ended up getting pregnant. There was just a lot of stuff that went down, and she didn't live at the house anymore. We didn't really talk much. So I had just gotten her back, and then she was kind of like gone just as quickly as I saw her again. So after she had left, probably started like the darkest part for me. I started getting depression, and there would be suicidal thoughts. And then once high school came around, there would be secret attempts that no one really knew about. But it was just a really, really dark time. And it took me a long time to realize it. Because going back to the physical abuse that happened, the emotional abuse that happened, even the sexual abuse that happened, having to deal with all of that but not having anyone to really cling on to was really difficult to manage by myself. But at the same time, all I ever really knew was to be by myself. I had to be my own advocate because I was alone. It wasn't until probably my senior year of high school, I remember sitting in church and my pastor was just saying, he's like, you know what, suicide is not a normal thought. And I was like, what? Like, that's not something normal people think about? Because it was just something that I had thought about consistently day by day, that everyone was better if I wasn't here. I mean, I'm already by myself. No one's going to miss me if I'm gone. Obviously, there's always those details with, like, I am a child of God. God loves me. He sent his son to die for me. Like, all that stuff it's just knowledge. I mean, people hear that every single day, but actually knowing it is different than just hearing it. Because I had to be honest with God about my problems and just the issues and the thoughts that I had going on with my head. It helped me be honest with the people that I loved. At the end of my freshman year, I ended up meeting Eric, and we dated for a while. Soon after that, we got engaged. We got married. I never told him that I was like struggling with depression. He knew that I would have days where I was just sad, but he wasn't too familiar with it, so he didn't really connect the dots because it wasn't something that he's ever dealt with. And so we were sitting outside of like a Starbucks and a Lowe's parking lot, and I just completely broke down, and I told him, I'm like, I just don't want to live anymore. And I don't know how to tell you that. To just say it was still really hard. Like, I wrote it down, but when you actually hear the words come out of your own mouth that like, I don't really care if I'm here, and I don't care if I die. I don't care how I die. Like, that's a completely different thing to say it than it is to write it. So, telling him was one of the most difficult things I've ever done, but also one of the best things that I have ever done. Because we talked about it, and from then on out, I was able to be honest with him and just say, hey, you know what, I'm having a really hard day. And be like, okay. And I would come home, and their water would be warm, and we would just sit on the couch and drink tea. And we would talk. Or we wouldn't talk. He would sit there and hold me, and he would understand as much as he could. And I made the decision that I didn't want to be like this anymore. I'm like, I need to find someone to talk to more than just my husband. And through that, a lot of healing started. Looking back through everything that had happened, I could still see that God was consistent. That his love was always there even when I didn't see it. Like, he was in the home the day that I called the cops because me and my sister got out safe. During the times in the foster homes, God was still there. During the emotional abuse and the sexual abuse, like, God was still there. And that's really hard to think about, just because you think that, oh, God is there. I'm not going to struggle anymore. Or he's not going to allow this to happen. But if I go back and look at every single thing that happened through my life, I would not change a single thing. I wouldn't trade the pain for anything. Because it's brought me to where I am now. And I don't have everything figured out. I don't have my life together at all. But I know that no matter what, God's gonna be there, because God is here. And in every single little detail of my life that had happened, he was always consistent. And when there was no one else there to hug me, when I didn't have anyone else there, he was always consistent. It's just crazy to think that so much good can come out of so much bad, because there are so many messy situations that work out for so good. Because no matter what, he is good.